The government has tipped its racist Windrushy hand yet again with the deportation of Jamaican nationals. They say they're removing violent criminals from this country to keep the public safe. But what about Rashawn Davis, one of those who was due to be on the flight earlier this week? He was sentenced to 14 months in jail, but only served 2 because in 2016, our system decided that you can't convict someone for simply being present when someone else commits robbery. This father of 2, who came to the UK aged 11 and knows nobody in Jamaica, has committed no crime since his release. People will tell you that the government is just trying to keep us safe. But if even one of them clearly poses no risk to society, then that's not the reason they're doing it. Let's be clear on something. The at least 83 citizens who were deported in the Windrush scandal were British citizens. So when our Conservative government got rid of people whose only distinguishing factor from the rest of the population was their ethnic origin, it was racist.
You know, Femi, I think it's outrageous that you, in the same breath, you mention Windrush, you say the racist Windrush he had. These two things are entirely different. Windrush was a scandal. It was shameful. It was a group of Commonwealth citizens, many of whom had lived in this country for decades, who were chucked out because apparently they didn't have the proper paperwork. So it was deemed that they were illegals here and they were thrown out. Shameful. That is our government shame. This is entirely different. This is a group of hardened criminals. All of the original 56, 300 years prison sentence between them. In that crowd, there were killers, there were rapists, there were drug dealers, there were sex offenders. That's in the original 56. And you dare to compare that to Windrush. It's nothing like the same. And the people of this country, and one of the people who was taken out of that 56 was a killer. He was a man, he was a Jamaican drug dealer. He actually, it's hard to even say, he took a claw hammer and he took a kitchen knife and he killed a young mother in front of her 6-year-old daughter. And then when the daughter tried to intervene, she was battered too. You're saying that these people have rights in these countries. You also said a lot of them were, that most of them were British citizens. They were not. They were foreign nationals. There's a difference. A lot of them were given leave to remain in this country. And if you're given the privilege of staying in this country and you abuse that privilege by killing people, by raping people, by selling drugs to kids, you shouldn't be allowed to stay here.
So, as I just said, I anticipated you would try and point to the worst of the worst. I told you a specific story of a father of 2 who apparently was wrongly convicted because they changed the law in 2016 to find that his original conviction was wrong. He served 2 months in prison.
What about the
wrongly.
killers and the rapists and the sex offenders?
Here's my point. If even one of them within that group poses zero risk to society, yes, we can make a separate argument for the rapists, the killers, etc. But for this particular one, if they're including people who pose no risk to society, who there's no even reason to get rid of them,
hang on.
Then it's
you
not...
say pose no risk. All of those people had served at least 1 year in prison for a very serious offence.
He served 2 months. That's my point. He served 2 months because he was wrongly convicted. Or you've also got Twain Morgan, who served 2 tours in Afghanistan fighting for this country and suffered PTSD for which he got no help and ended up committing GBH. That is a failure of our country to one of our veterans.
And there's the killers and the rapists.
I was involved via my LBC show in speaking out frequently about the deportation of Kweke Wadebole, who was convicted for financial fraud but had been in this country since he was a child. And I think there is a room here to recognise your point that this isn't Windrush. Windrush were not criminally convicted, but also I think to acknowledge that there is a broader question mark around citizenship that has emerged post-ISIS brides debate. And it's not fully transparent nor clear nor consistent to everybody where this should apply and where this shouldn't. Hence the ruling, actually, because of judicial review, to stop half of these deportations, and then Downing Street's criticism of that ruling. And I think, actually, pretty much we can all probably agree that there is room for some deportations. If you arrived in this country yesterday and murder, say, 10 people, then you're going to go back to...
If you arrived here 5 years ago and you murder people, you should be shut down.
So I'm saying that that's one end of it. And the other end, of course, is if somebody came here at 2 years old And then let's have a look. Here's an example of it, actually. So Michael McDonald, and he's in detention awaiting deportation to Jamaica. He said, when the government talks about sending me back, they mean a place that's back in quotation marks. They mean a place that's completely foreign to me, Jamaica. I have no family in Jamaica. My parents, siblings, aunts and uncles all live in the UK and have British citizenship. I first came here 20 years ago when I was 9. Britain is where I went to school and raised a family. A prison sentence has already ripped mine apart. I don't want to think about what will happen to my family if I'm sent to Jamaica. There is surely room for conversation about, even perhaps he was 9, if someone came here at 3 or 4, about
But if you care about your family,
families
don't
apart.
commit serious crimes.
Yeah.
Well, I think that that's right. You know, one of the things about these deportations and the numbers involved is precisely that we don't know. We don't know. Some of them may be Windrush, and some of them may not.
None of them. None of them.
The ones that were deported, but there was a number.
Can I read? Let me tell you the ones who were deported.
I would-
no, just for your
I wanted
information.
to-
We've got this. Well, we have
can't say
to
let me finish.
No, but we have to do this anyway. 2 people were convicted of rape, 3 were convicted of violent crime, 8 convicted of drugs offences, 3 convicted of robbery and firearm offences, 1 of burglary.
I think Rachel was talking about the ones that weren't deported.
Exactly.
Yes.
I was talking about the ones that weren't deported.
Yes.
And the point about this is, look, after Windrush, which we all agree was horrendous, despicable, shameful, the government had a review, lessons learned review. And one of the things it pledged to do was to halt deportations until that review had concluded and published its reports. Now, as it happens, bits of that report have already been leaked. And it is damning. It is absolutely damning. It is accusing the government of failing to adhere to its legal duty to ensure equality. And one of the things it recommends is that people who arrived in the UK as children up to the age of 13 should not be deported. Now, my question is, why hasn't the government just waited until it published that review before moving things forward? What is the reason for that?
Let me tell you what the Home Office is saying. Foreign nationals who abuse our hospitality by committing crimes in the UK should be in no doubt of our determination to deport them. Since 2010, we have carried out enforced returns to 193 different countries. We make no apology whatsoever for seeking to remove dangerous foreign criminals. They added, in the year ending September 2019, there were 49 enforced returns, as they're called, to Jamaica. In the same period, we returned more individuals to 26 other countries, including Romania, Albania, Poland, Brazil, Ukraine and Pakistan. So that's what the Home Office is saying. I think it's clumsy and unfair to use Windrush. I really do. Nobody in the Windrush cause committed any crime. These are, some of them it's quite low-level crime. Some of it we are talking rape and killing. What you have to, are you aware of what the deportation process is and the number of hurdles that has to be cleared? So upon conviction, the person is given 10 years and they with a recommendation to be deported. So that's hurdle 1. They serve 5. Then a notice of intent to deport is served on them. They get legal advice then. Then as it goes through, they get another legal advice. In some instances, I don't know about these cases, they've certainly got to satisfy 2 judges and a panel. In some instances, they satisfy 3, 4 judges and a panel before they are deported. Exactly. We don't know the ins and outs of all the cases. I am prepared, because of my faith in British justice, if they've done enough to persuade certainly 2 judges, possibly 3, and a panel, these people need to go.
But I've just given a concrete example of somebody whose conviction was overturned precisely because...
But a judge will have ruled that the judge will have ruled that he has to go.
We're talking about somebody who was present at the time that 2 mobile phones were stolen, who in 2016, our courts decided that this was not
I don't know
legal,
if you're deliberately
lawful.
ignoring my point. A judge will have had to be satisfied.
And done so clearly wrongly. Can anybody honestly...
So you're better than the judge.
Can anybody honestly say that a father of 2 who was wrongly sentenced needs to be kicked out of the country?
And the killer that I was talking about before, who I can't name because there are various things in the process, had they deported him when they should have, the person who he killed would still be alive today. And, you know, the family of that girl and all the other people who've been murdered, killed, manslaughter, raped, people listening to you thinking, and you too to an extent, Rachel, and thinking that you put the human rights of these criminals above the human rights of decent, law-abiding British citizens. And that's what it sounds like.
It's not about those ones.
That's a horrendous thing to say.
One sentence wrap up, Rachel.
It's about treating people with dignity and applying the law humanely. And you say we don't trust the legal system. The problem is that we don't trust the government.